Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. Welcome everyone.
It's a dark day in America. It is.
Wednesday. That's right. We mourn the
Wednesday.
loss. It's on Ash Wednesday. Yeah, of Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh succumbed to what was it? What did he have brain? It was lung cancer, wasn't it?
It was lung cancer, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of thought something was up because normally he would take off for treatment weeks, and then suddenly he just took off, and we didn't hear a word from him for 2 weeks. And I kept thinking, it must be getting worse because he's just not able to do the show. And I guess, well, I was right. So he opened the door for conservative media. There would be no conservative media without Rush Limbaugh, unless someone else had stepped into those shoes. But, I guess a lot of people are wondering what's going to come next.
Yeah, he was kind of uniquely able to fill that spot. He could respond quickly. He always had new stuff to talk about or new ways of going over stuff. And to fill that slot every day like he did.
Yeah, that would be tough. We have a hard enough time doing it every week.
And he did it live.
All we got to do is for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did it live. I edit out all our coughing and sniffing and stuff like that. Or at least
and sometimes when we say something stupid or go off on
let's just
dumb tangents.
Let's just erase that. That sounded dumb.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He made it fun. Remember his updates, and he had the feminazi updates. Do you remember that one?
Oh, that's right. The feminazi update. Oh, he had the various updates.
Yeah.
The environmentalist updates, the homosexual updates, and he had a bumper song for each of them.
Yeah. We're fierce, we're feminists, and we're in your face. Do you remember that one with the guy laughing? I don't know. Was that him laughing?
It might have been. But yeah, laughing in the background with
yeah. I laughed every time he'd play that. Do you remember Dan's Bake Sale?
No. No, I don't remember that one.
Could you forget Dan's Bake Sale? A guy had been. He called up the show and he was talking about making copies of Rush's newsletter, and Rush is like, "Whoa, wait a minute! You can't make copies of it." And he kept saying, "Well, I can't afford it." And Rush is like, "Well, why don't you have a bake sale? Have a bake sale." Because all them kids were having bake sales to send to Bill Clinton for the lunch funds or something. And
right.
So they planned this bake sale, and hundreds of thousands of people showed up in this city for Dan's bake sale. The guy could have.
That's awesome.
The guy could have become a millionaire if he had.
Yeah.
He didn't really. I think he came out with like a couple dozen cookies, but and I don't remember. I think Rush Limbaugh was there. I don't know.
Oh wow!
But it was a huge event.
But yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like professional chefs were flying in to set up tables and stuff.
Yeah, and then when Clinton won, America held hostage.
Oh yeah, America
Remember, on
held
day
hostage.
The day after the inauguration, it was day one, and he did that. Every day, America held hostage. Day 142. He
just had a way of making it enjoyable to hear what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think he did that right up to the end. And he's one of the few people who he stuck with Trump for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He wasn't a sycophant or anything. But he understood what was at stake, and he understood Trump's dedication to doing what needed to be done.
Yeah, to the right things. So we'll certainly miss you, Rush.
Yeah.
Everybody say a prayer for his soul.
Yeah. He unfortunately he did not die a Catholic.
Yeah, he never did become Catholic. That's unfortunate, but we still pray, hopefully.
Yeah. I always hoped he would, but I guess I didn't really pray all that hard for it. Which reminds me, maybe we should start praying for Trump to become Catholic. So
Yeah. He's still in my morning prayers every day.
yeah.
As President Trump, by the way, everybody, it's okay to still call him President Trump, not because he's still the president specifically, but because once a person gains a title of state, he always is referred to properly within that title. So somebody who's been a senator is still senator. Or,
right.
Or like, for example, Joe Biden, when, even when he went back to being a senator, it would still be proper to address him as Vice President Biden because that was the highest office that he had held.
Right.
And so, for example, past presidents, like if you were to meet Clinton or Obama or something, it would be proper for you to address them as President Clinton or President Obama, and it's still proper to refer to Trump as President Trump.
Remember when Rush used to call Clinton ex-President Clinton?
Ex-President Clinton. People don't even give Trump that much. Everybody who refers to him anymore in the media refers to him as Donald J. Trump now. They don't even.
Yeah.
It shows you how annoyed they are that he even became president.
Right. Let's see. Today we are talking about concupiscence.
Concupiscence. Yeah, that's
which is kind of fitting because we're going to talk about man and how he was once not contaminated with sin, and then he was contaminated with sin. And just recent, let's see, I think it was either today or yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Pope Francis is addressing people, and he's standing at the window with a mic, and he's talking, and he says, God is the one who contaminates himself. He's talking about where St. Paul said he made himself sin. But the way he put it is putting it that way has been rejected by the church. That's not the way to put it. God did not contaminate himself because grace flows from God. Sin doesn't flow to God. So God did not contaminate himself. But that's what he said. And as he said these words, this tapestry that was hanging under him got caught up in the wind and went up against his face.
God smacked him?
Yeah, he got God smacked. Literally.
Do we have a link to a video of that?
I will. Yeah, I'll put a link. And it's, I don't know. He said a lot worse things. Well, maybe not.
Yes, he has, but it's just funny.
It's not actual heresy because I think it's just the wording is.
Yeah, because you could interpret it different ways. He contaminated himself in the sense that, if you think of a contamination in the same sense that you think of as doping, like for an alloy or something, he like simply adding something new. Well, he added, the human nature to himself, to his divine essence. So, there are ways that you could interpret it, but contamination, at least in the modern sense, the way people think, it always means, something dirty, something is sullied or made less perfectly what it was before. Contaminated milk is no longer good milk and so forth.
Right.
And in that sense, it's very definitely and clearly a heresy to think of it in that way.
It's always been my understanding that when God became man, when he took the human nature, he did not degrade himself. Rather, he elevated man. Yeah. Yeah. Because God can't degrade himself. He's no less than he was before. Mm-hmm. He submitted to a weaker nature, maybe?
He submitted in his divine will. He willed for his human nature to submit, for example, at the Passion, when he allowed himself to be crucified and stuff like that.
On pain, yeah.
And so, but but what they say is that he assumed human nature, which included the ability to suffer pain and everything else that human nature includes.
Right.
Now, but he didn't, in any sense, sully or contaminate his divine essence by doing so.
You know, one thing I always wondered about that, and maybe this might be answered later, but, okay, God creates Adam, and are we to understand that Adam in his state before the fall would not have felt pain, or just didn't have the opportunity to feel pain?
No, I think that he would have had the opportunity. I think he could have felt pain. Because he participated in the nature of animals. He, even pre-fall, he was a rational animal. But in that sense, the higher animals, the reason they have pain and everything is to allow them to safely navigate a world where things may be dangerous or whatever. So, for example, he would have been able to feel something that's warm and become burned by it in the sense of it uncomfortable. Oh, I need to avoid that. That'll harm my skin if I touch that for too long or whatever. And other things like that. So I think that Adam and Eve could feel pain in that sense, but they also would have been perfectly in their their state of original justification, which included some gifts that were not purely natural. I think they would have been able to, for example, perfectly navigate a walkway so that they would not have any danger of falling and hurting themselves in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's dig into this. Where would you want to start?
Good place to start.
We start with the perfect man or the fallen man?
Let's start with the perfect man let's start with. Hold on, just a minute. I'm adjusting my headset. Keeps falling down. All right. Okay, so let's start with. Let's start with what I'd like to do is kind of start with what, when you hear concupiscence and people explain it, what I've always heard as an explanation is that it means that in our fallen state, we have a inclination towards evil, is how it was explained, how I've heard it. Now, I don't know if you've heard that same definition.
I've heard more inclination for sin.
Okay, inclination for sin, inclination for evil. Sin is a specific kind of evil, a willful disobedience to God. So, and that it could mean a lot of things when you look at that. So, for example, you could take it to mean mere perversity. We like to do things that are wrong just to get away with doing things that are wrong. It could mean that everybody has a sort of a lapsed heart of a serial killer inside of them, or a sadist or something like that. And so I never quite exactly knew how to understand in a very specific way what concupiscence was. And I was kind of reflecting on this a few weeks ago, and I happened on what I believe is a completely perfect explanation that I think everybody ought to be able to understand.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, well, hey, let's talk about concupiscence sometime, because it's one of those confusing topics, and it's a Catholic thing, and we haven't really dealt with it.
Right.
So I think, if we start with Adam, in his perfect original nature, or his original state, let's call it, he was given, and we are all still given, three basic faculties that account for most of what we do. And these were kind of identified by philosophers like Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. But the three faculties are will. So we have the free will. They call it agency. We can decide what to do. Intellect. We can know things, and not just know them in the sense that it's information sitting in a brain, but know them and deliberate on them and have an understanding of knowing them, and so on and so forth. and
Okay.
our appetite, which are everything that else that's related to either our animal nature or things like our emotions, like, we have an appetite for affection and stuff like that. But those are the three primary faculties. And in a rightly ordered human person, there's a hierarchy of those. So the will is subordinated to the intellect. So the intellect is on top, and the will is subordinated to the intellect, and the appetite is subordinated to the will. So you know what's right, you know about the world around you, you know about how things work, and you know the moral code, you know what to do, and based on that knowledge, you choose to do those things. And then from time to time you have appetites, but those appetites, even though they arise within your body and in your mind and so on and so forth, your response to them and your pursuit of them is always under the control of your will. So that's how it's supposed to be in a perfectly ordered human being.
So in that perfect order, is there room for variation in the perfect man? I mean, is there ever a time when appetite would rise above will?
No, not in
Okay.
Adam as he originally was created. Now, people were still going to be different people, and we still had a gene pool, and there were going to be people who liked swimming more, and there were going to be people who I don't know, liked climbing trees more or whatever.
Yeah.
People who liked doing math, and people who liked building stuff. And so it's not like everybody was going to be like these
Robots.
stamped out die cut soldiers of some kind that just kind of
Right.
went around the world like Stepford people or something, but the will was subordinated to the intellect, the appetites were subordinated to the will. But here's the thing about that. The will is the linchpin of it, because it's by virtue of our will that we have the ability, it's through an act of the will that we acquire knowledge and process it and then submit to it. So the intellect itself as a faculty is not I'm not using this term necessarily philosophically, but it's not an active faculty. It doesn't cause things. It's not a causative faculty. Only the will is causative, and the will either submits itself to the intellect or decides not to, becomes willful and says, well, yeah, I know that this is right, but that's where the perversity maybe of wanting to get away with something might come in.
Oh.
That would be an example of the will failing to submit to the intellect. So in Adam and Eve both, individually, this ordering was perfect. Now, this presents a kind of a special problem, if you want to think of it, for Satan, who wants Adam and Eve to fall from grace, because they know everything that God gave them, they know everything that God told them, and they know what their responsibility is in response to that. And their will is already ordered to be in submission to that, to be subordinate to that, and their appetites are perfectly subordinate to their will. So you notice what did the serpent do? It didn't approach Adam and Eve on the level of the appetite. I mean, we talk about the fruit of the tree, but it didn't try to say, look how good and juicy this is, or something like that. It didn't say,
Right.
It didn't offer some kind of thing. It'll feel really good to eat this, or anything like that. Nor did it even attack the intellect directly. He didn't say, what is this God telling you what to do? Don't you want to do your own thing? Go ahead and eat the fruit. Be your own man, or anything like that. He didn't try to encourage willfulness. Now, maybe he did from time to time. We don't know what preceded the actual fall.
Right.
But what worked was he went after the intellect. He said, if you eat this fruit, you'll gain knowledge. You'll become like gods. You'll know good from evil. And that was what he did. And that's what was the occasion. And the will, it knew that it's supposed to have knowledge, Adam knows that he's supposed to have knowledge, and the will is ordered to acquiring knowledge for the purpose of submitting to it, of being subordinate to it, right? So Adam in his willfulness, he's perfectly ordered to the idea of knowing and therefore doing. And Eve also. But here's the thing, and this is why Satan went after Eve specifically and through Eve Adam and not after Adam directly, because not only are they perfectly ordered in their faculties with will or intellect, will, and appetite, but Adam is oriented towards God, and so Adam much more acutely would have this command of God: "You shall not eat the tree," in the middle, in however I read it different ways, right. Middle of the garden or whatever it is. And Adam would have, even at the offer of knowledge, he would have resisted the offer from the serpent. But Eve is ordered to Adam. And so the serpent's offering her, knowledge, I can help my husband will be better. And so she was more easily swayed in terms of not, realizing the implications, or maybe she did realize it in some way, but not following through on the one idea that this is what God commanded. There's an obedience requirement here, because she was oriented towards Adam rather than towards God. She was oriented, in a sense, towards God through Adam, but it's because of how God set up that relationship between man and woman that Satan went after the woman. And then once the woman, having taken the fruit and eaten it, well, now it's a lot easier for Adam to kind of receive it, because, God put her here as a helpmate, and now she's offering me this knowledge, and it's a lot more of an even-keeled contest in Adam's mind now, and so he chose to disobey God and eat the fruit as well. But
so so they he offers them knowledge.
Yeah.
That was the temptation. Was there a temptation to not trust that God had their interests at heart, or was there a temptation to be better than they were meant to be? What was the actual temptation?
I think the temptation,
or was it?
I
was
think
it
it's
just a lie?
No. Well, no. It was.
I mean, it had to have been a sin, a willful sin.
It was a sin.
They had to know that it was wrong.
Yeah. It was a temptation to do wrong, but I think it's actually a maybe a less majestic, but still fitting, a still appropriate example of how Thomas Aquinas described the fall of the angels. And this really bothered him, because the angels, these creatures, their knowledge, if you take the knowledge of the smartest men on earth, you combine Thomas Aquinas and Albert Einstein and a few other great military tacticians and strategists and so on and so forth, and you combine all of their knowledge together into one intellect, and then multiply that by maybe 10 million or so, and now you're starting to reach the intellect of maybe the lower angels or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these angels, and Lucifer was apparently like one of the highest, and so these angels, they had this complete infused knowledge of God. They had and they only have the faculties of intellect and will. They don't have appetites the way we do.
Right.
And so, but somehow, how could they, with this knowledge and knowing with a far more greater certainty than Adam, for example, who would have to reason it out within the mechanisms of his brain, they would have a far more certain knowledge of the result of disobeying God, or failing to do God's will. And yet they chose to do so anyway. And Thomas Aquinas struggled with this, and I haven't read thoroughly his explanation, but But the fundamental point here that he landed upon is that it's not that they desired something wrong. It's that they desired something right in a way that wasn't fitting. Okay. And I think that's a good way of thinking of the sin of Adam. It's not that Adam wanted something that was wrong. It's that he wanted something right, which is knowledge, because we're supposed to get knowledge, but he wanted it, and he was led to wanting it in a way that was unfitting. And so when he made that decision that, okay, command of God, knowledge that God told me not to get, and he made the willful decision to disobey God and go after that knowledge, it's that sense, I think, that resulted in it being a temptation, that it wasn't a temptation of like I said, it wasn't a low temptation, it was a high temptation.
Right.
You can almost think of it like the kind of thing, like St. Francis, when he stole the cloth from his father and sold it to rebuild the church.
Right.
Kind of along those lines almost. So that's perfect Adam.
That's perfect Adam. And then, did you
then
ever read Mark Twain's
Adam and Eve, the diary?
Yeah, the diary. When he's like walking on the home and all of a sudden all the animals are eating each other. He can't figure out what's going on.
What?
And then he's talking about Eve and how water comes out of the place she sees.
Yeah. Which, by the way, just in case anybody's wondering, Catholic scholars all agree that carnivores did exist before the fall. Animals ate each other before the fall.
They did eat each other. So did
rabbits were eaten by leopards and stuff.
Did the prey try to escape the predators?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
But now, Adam and Eve had everything they needed in the garden. They probably didn't need to eat animals, and Adam probably didn't eat any animals before the fall. But had we had an appetite for animals and we wanted to catch animals and use them for food, we could have approached them and caught them without them trying to escape. Yeah. Because of that special relationship with nature that we had. The animals would have been perfectly obedient to Adam. But the animal kingdom existed pretty much as it is. The one difference being animals' deference to humans.
Yeah. Okay.
So, anyway.
It's hard to imagine because when you think of that, you think of pain.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's kind of funny you bring that up. I'm about 3/4 of the way through an essay that I'm writing specifically on animal pain.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I don't know. Maybe if you like it, I'll send it to you.
We'll talk about it on the show
editing
and stuff.
Yeah, with a few shows from now, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a long project.
Yeah, I imagine.
Okay. So anyway,
you go on now.
So Adam falls, Eve falls, and now they have this knowledge of good and evil. But what's interesting for the sake of this podcast is that now that ordering of will or of intellect, will, and appetite is always under the threat of inversion. And for example, we all can see how we experience this in our own lives. How many times, as Catholics, we've got Lent every year. How many times do you decide, I'm going to do these 8 things for Lent this year, and by the end of the first week, it's I'm doing 5 of them,
or the first day.
Yeah, or the first day.
I almost turned the TV on today while I was waiting for you. I'm like, because I gave up TV before 9:30, and I'm sitting here waiting, and I'm eating, and I don't like to hear eating, even if it's my eating. So I always turn the TV on while I'm eating, and I almost did. I didn't, but I almost did. We'll see what happens by next week.
I mean, sometimes you do it like just you forget. It's like, oh shoot, I gave that up. But there's sometimes like, well, no, I'll give it up next year. I mean, you actually willfully make that decision.
Right.
And then there's also, and this is the more dangerous. especially when it comes to, we consider sinfulness. And obviously a lot of sinfulness involves appetites that somehow the will subordinates itself to the appetite. You give yourself over to your appetite instead of controlling your appetite. But what's even more dangerous is that the will subjects the intellect to itself rather than subjecting itself and subordinating itself to your intellect. So you know certain things, and then by accepting a certain habit of sin, what do? You start rationalize it. You start conforming your intellect to the point where now that you know that it's not wrong to do this thing anymore. I mean,
right.
Think of how many, drinkers, the alcoholics and drug abusers, before they quite get to the point of, the physical addiction, while they're sort of on that slope with, we talked about addiction and how it works and the process and the, the ritualization. How often do somebody might even challenge them about it. And the challenge is obvious. I mean, it's intellectually sound, but because they've committed themselves to this, the will not wanting to exercise control over the appetite, instead it exercises control over the intellect and says, well, okay, we're going to believe this now.
I'll tell you what, I think that is probably our biggest obstruction to evangelization. Because, look, you can convince people of things like it's easier to convince someone to be a conservative than it is to be a Christian. Because you can be a conservative and still do liberal things. But when you admit to Christianity, it requires you to change something.
Yeah, you got to change how you live. That's
it's like the first step. The first step in converting anyone is to try to get them to submit their will to their intellect and to reverse that.
Yeah, to arrive at that point. And that's why conversions rarely happen on an intellectual level first.
Yeah.
Because you talk to people who are successful at evangelizing, in terms of one-on-one, and they'll tell you that no, it's never a case of sitting down and explaining and laying out logically with syllogisms and everything else, and then people say, oh, I see, yes, well, of course, right. It's intellectually necessary that Jesus is the true God and founded the church, and the Catholic Church is the true church of Christ. I have to become Catholic now. It never works like that. They always say that it's the stories of the heart and the witnessing of personal events and that kind of stuff that brings people in. And of course, what is that doing? That's appealing to a certain kind of appetite, an appetite for whatever it is, for something that person feels like they lack in their life. It might be an appetite for belonging or an appetite for purpose or something like that, but it's an appetite. A higher appetite, not a base appetite like food or sex or whatever, but it's an appetite. And then the will, and this is kind of the merciful magic of how God built us. Okay, by an act of the will failing to stay subordinated to intellect, we fell, and now that's inverted. But that very inversion, the fact that that appetite is, our various appetites are out there and can be worked with, then becomes a source of conversion.
Yeah. I got to wonder, that's probably why missionaries, when they go to nations that don't know what Christianity is, have so much success. And it's shameful, the fact that we've got missionaries down in the Amazon who are not baptizing people and who are not really trying to convert them.
Yeah.
Because that's the crop. That's a crop waiting to be picked.
Yeah. That's like, what's the line Jesus said? The harvest is ready, but the laborers are few.
Yeah. We see that happening.
I guess you get laborers who don't even want to do the labor. They want to stand out in the field and I don't know.
Just stand there, I guess.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything. But here's the problem. It also opens the door for people who are not Catholic to go down there and evangelize. And we're seeing a lot of these nations turn Protestant.
They're turning Protestant before they even turn Catholic.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, our bishops these bishops are, something needs to happen. We're at this weird point in the church where there are no areas where the church is really growing again, or it seems like it.
Yeah,
I hear about
kind of
places in
Africa.
Asia and Africa.
Well,
those are the two.
in Asia against the persecution, which
there's a lot of Protestants in Africa too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are some serious persecutions, right, in some of the African countries. Okay. But anyway, I think that is the central nature of concupiscence, is simply that inclination to invert the ordering of the faculties, that we now have this sort of inclination to subordinate our will to our appetites and subordinate our intellect to our will. And I think I think that explains pretty much everything everybody has ever said about concupiscence.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Adam is here in his perfect state, and if he's hungry and there's food in front of him that belongs to someone else, there's no temptation really to take the food, because
yeah, exactly. He's not going to be tempted just by virtue of the hunger. That's a mere appetite. He's going to go get his own food.
Now suddenly, with appetite above will, he's just because he's hungry and nothing else tempts him to take something that isn't his.
Right.
So it's not like the devil made me do it all the time. It's the sins often come from inside us.
And that's the, that's exactly that. I think that's the main distinction with this idea of concupiscence as an inclination to sin, that people are trying to get at. The temptation had to be planted from the outside somehow, in the case of Adam and Eve. But our inclinations to do that, our temptations are interior. We have the interior conflict that we need to resolve. And I think also that I don't know if it seems to me that it's pretty much only been since the Protestant revolt, the Protestants came on the scene, whatever, that people have been sort of using that "the devil made me do it" kind of phrase. Yeah. I think the Catholic understanding of concupiscence is more of a, no, the devil doesn't make you do anything ever. It's your failure to exercise control over yourself.
Right.
Now, of course, in states of addiction and that kind of stuff, we don't want to try to say that people who are addicted therefore can simply control it by an act of the will. That's not what we're talking about. Right.
But everything's topsy-turvy, and it's got to be put right. Have you read Thomas Aquinas' book about St. Francis?
No, I have not. I read G.K. Chesterton's book about St. Francis.
I don't know why I said Thomas Aquinas. I meant Chesterton. Thomas Aquinas would not have written about St. Francis.
No.
Thomas Aquinas was several hundred years before St. Francis. He's a prophet. No, it reminds me of when he talks about St. Francis coming out of the cave and seeing the world upside down, and as if he's walking around on his hands, when really the world is now right side up to him, because he can see everything that he didn't see before. And I imagine that's kind of what happened, is he had an alignment of his will and intellect and appetite.
Oh, yeah, that's quite
through the grace of God, but
through a special grace.
He went into this cave and he comes out the saint.
And,
I think
bit by
that
bit,
song by the Mumford Sons is about that event.
Which one?
There's one called The Cave.
Oh, okay.
If you listen to it, most people think it sounds like it's about addiction. And some people see several references there to Plato's cave. Plato talks about someone, and I'm not going to get this 100% right, but someone, say, who's raised in a cave, and he sees the outside world, but he doesn't see it directly. He sees the shadows on the wall. So he sees people working and playing and doing things, and his reality is the shadow on the wall. And then one day he's able to see clearly when he turns around and looks outside. And that's
kind of a reference to that could be a reference to Plato, though.
That's what I said.
Oh, okay, you said Plato. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so there's some mention of that in the song, but what they're actually talking about is the cave that St. Francis went into as told by Chesterton. And I think Chesterton does mention Plato when he's talking about this event.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
So anyway, St. Francis comes out and he sees the whole world new, and he's not going to be tempted by the same things anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a good song.
That makes sense. And that's that is over and over and over again the battle of of the Christian, the regular Christian trying to live a life is to get those faculties back in right ordering.
Which is why fasting is such a huge deal, which makes it fitting for podcast today.
That's right.
Because if you don't get your appetites under control, they control you eventually. And it gets ugly when that happens every time. Mm-hmm. It's never, ever pretty when your appetites control you.
2 hours.
Huh?
I always fast from solid foods for all of Ash Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, I know. You know what? I normally do. But, man, I had a busy day, and I thought, I got to talk, and I have to be somewhat pleasant. Yeah. And I'm tired and grumpy, so I ate a couple pieces of pizza when I got home, and then I'll probably still eat something at midnight, but I normally do on the fast days. I try to every Friday, but I make it to dinner time.
Even when I don't, and when I haven't, it's still been enough that I wait till that midnight and then say, okay, now I'm going to go have whatever, I don't know, cheese coating or something.
Well, the thing is, when you make it a point to fast, and then other times when you don't get what you want, it's just not as big a deal. Exactly. That's like, the thing. When you're already used to depriving yourself, you don't feel deprived as much. Yeah. You kind of like, oh, well, I wanted that, but I don't get it, so, oh, well, I'll get something else or do without, and maybe next time. And it's just, life gets so much easier as you get these three things into alignment.
Yeah. That's why you see the stories about how joyful and mirthful the saints were, even when they were often going through very hard situations.
Right, because when I read about the saints, I think, that's terrible. I don't want to be a saint. But
I know.
They act all happy about it, and it's like, well...
But they were all happy, yeah.
I don't want to feel pain. Yeah. I don't want to go to prison and get eaten by a lion.
Get beaten and robbed.
Okay, well, I
guess that's all I've got for concupiscence.
Okay,
yeah,
that's good, because I was gonna say we should try to make this kind of short because
okay.
I had a really long day, but we still got to do news and okay.
Well, we can do that.
Let's do the news. International Atomic Energy Agency confirms that Iran has carried out its plan to produce uranium metal, which is
Okay.
essential to making the core of a nuclear weapon.
Okay. So they are on a nuclear program.
Yeah.
As though anybody doubted
Right.
that they would be, to the extent that they were able to get away with it.
Yeah. It's just that before, at least they had to hide it. And maybe they didn't have as much access. Now, they're not even...
They don't care.
They
They're
don't
going
care
to
about
thumb their
hiding
nose at
it.
Biden.
It's a
Biden's not
big
going to do
deal.
anything.
Yeah. Except start some kind of little desert war that never ends and nobody ever wins.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The Supreme Court of Pakistan commutes the death sentences of 2 schizophrenic prisoners because they might have been unable to comprehend the rationale of their crimes, making the death sentence not meet the ends of justice. Normally I wouldn't bring something like that up. It just it brings up a point that I think maybe we could do a show about, as far as the death penalty and justice and putting to death someone who might not understand their crime.
Yeah.
Right now, just off the top of my head, I think that even someone who doesn't understand what they've done should still get put to death for certain crimes.
For certain crimes. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that would be the better way to do it, and I don't think it's a violation of human rights. If it's proven that you killed someone, purposely killed them, even though you don't know that it's wrong to do that, or if you have a second personality who did it, unbeknownst to you, you should still be put to death for that.
Yeah.
Now, but that begs if you got a schizophrenic prisoner, which one of the personalities is the real person?
Yeah, I don't even know that. It just the news article just says schizophrenic, because I don't know that schizophrenic is always necessarily.
It's not split personality.
What do they call it?
Like
the personality disorder thing, the multiple personalities thing.
It's often seeing or hearing voices, things like that.
Okay, yeah. So,
but another.
I can't. I can't see that would be a reason necessarily to commute the sentence. The thing is, during the trial, presumably, now this is, you said Pakistan?
Yeah, this is in Pakistan.
In the United States, they would have had to demonstrate intent as part of the trial process. And so it's kind of presuming on that same kind of jurisprudence. I can't see that that should, it should matter much beyond that once you've got the intent proved. Right.
Yeah. Have we ever done a show on the death penalty? We didn't really do a show. We bring it up every now and then because of Pope Francis.
And I think we did one on Pope Francis's, his I don't know what to call them.
No, we didn't.
Strayings from church teaching, whatever.
Right. We mentioned it, but we didn't do a show about it.
We talked about the death penalty along with the Abu Dhabi document and along with those other things, but we never did one on the death penalty itself.
Well, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, maybe we can get someone to debate us on it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I think someone Jason Catholic, would have debated us, but Jason, I think, might be kind of changing on that one. Actually, I think Jason probably started changing his mind on that one once Pope Francis came out with his thing.
That's funny.
Which is kind of weird, but when you see the Pope doing it, then it's like, all right, there must be something wrong with it.
I
gotta rethink this.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's true. It just seems like that's how I'm remembering it.
Just kind of.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The timelines matched up.
Yeah. That's how just my memory. The China National Space Administration space probe enters into planetary orbit around Mars.
Okay.
This is the first Chinese craft to reach Mars, and it's going to deploy a rover. I don't know, which will supposed to hit the surface. I don't know. I wonder how that rover is compared to American rovers, but I
don't know.
You know, the weird thing is, I wonder when China does these things, do they open up the communication to everyone, or are they the only ones who can read it?
I bet they read
I'm
it
gonna
and
look
decide
into that.
what to share with everyone.
See, you can.
I mean, like if somebody had a radio, if somebody had a radio antenna, like you could receive communications from like NASA's stuff out there,
right? You can see what NASA sees. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're pretty open, and you could see all the pictures that every single one of their satellites sent. There's a giant database. You can go see it. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
China
Maybe there's
wouldn't do
things you cannot see. But China, put it this, look, I have some doubts about whether or not they really did this.
Oh,
all of a sudden in the
okay.
past year, they're claiming certain things that, some of these things that we've not been able to do. Where are they getting this technology?
Like what?
We did one a couple.
Specific?
We did one a couple weeks ago. It was something they found. I can't remember what it was. Man, I'd have to go through the thing to find out.
Okay,
But
yeah.
We've been seeing their name more and more in the space news, and I just, for some reason, they claim to have found something. What was it? Certain kind of atoms in space.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
Yeah,
did we talk
we
about
even
it on the
said,
podcast?
I wonder if that really happened or if they're just claiming it.
Oh, okay. Man, why don't I remember that? So, in any case, yeah, it is. You would take anything China says with a grain of salt. Don't.
Yeah, remember when
however-
they claimed to have cloned human beings?
Yeah.
After Dolly, they claimed they had actually cloned a human embryo or whatever, and it was like, I don't know. And then turned out to be a lie.
But, we should be worried about China's space activities.
Yeah, we should.
Think about this. And I know China back then wasn't the China now, because the China now is way more evil than China back then. But what if China, rather than Europe, had discovered the new world, America?
We'd all be Chinese.
And the world
But
would be
we
an
wouldn't
awful
be
place.
American. Yeah, we wouldn't be American.
The world
though.
would be
We'd
a bad
Chinese.
place because of that. I mean, that's the thing. That the values of the Chinese government are such that the world is a bad place to the extent that China has more influence in it.
Yeah.
And someday space is going to be a significant part of the workings, the economy, the culture, the society of the world.
Here's the thing, though. Mm-hmm. China could be twice as powerful as the U.S. They could be.
Yeah.
I mean, their nation is huge, and they have all the kinds of resources that we have here, only more so.
Right.
If they opened up their markets the way we did from the beginning, there would be no stopping them. But the world would be a better place because of it, not a worse place.
Yeah, that's the irony.
If freedom was there, China would be ginormous.
Yeah, but that would be okay then.
Yeah, then we'd want to go to China. But if they had, I mean, I think eventually we're going to reach a place that we can go in space and live. I don't think we're even close to that yet, but
no.
I mean, that's the goal.
It's going to become, space is going to become a reality. Initial, it'll be resources, natural resources and stuff like that. You've seen all the stuff in the sci-fi
Well, we
movies,
found a
asteroid
meteor made
mining
of gold.
and
Wouldn't
so
that
forth.
be cool?
Yeah. So and if we're mining stuff off of asteroids and the moons and stuff like that, but we could also we know that there are ways and reasons why, for example, nuclear power. There's a lot to be said for that, but disposing of waste and that kind of stuff can be problematic and so forth. Well, certain kinds of waste that nobody wants to say, yeah, you can put it in our ground.
Right, we can just send it out.
We can eject it, yeah. Put it on a trajectory for the sun or something like that.
But eventually we got to start bringing this stuff back in.
So that we...
If you took all the garbage and sent it to the sun, the Earth would begin to get smaller.
Yeah, well, that's...
And then the moon would start going away from us.
We we need to start mining it. That's right. Every little thing that you love. That would be like some kind of sci-fi story, like 200,000 years in the future, the Earth has like 80% of its current mass.
Right. I started writing a story like that. The premise was that Rumpke had figured out how to ship out garbage, and they cut their disposal costs in half by shipping it to the sun. And then all of a sudden, somebody started noticing that the moon was getting further away. So now they have to find a way to go get stuff and bring it back to Earth without it becoming like a meteor that
stuff from
kills everyone.
Asteroids and everything.
All right, moving on. Twitter confirms that the ban on Donald Trump's account will remain permanent. Like, we didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Like it matters. I don't know. We need a way out of this censorship, and normally I would kind of rest back and say it's going to happen in America because that's how America works. I have some doubts now, but I still think I think that's still how America works. Americans, the Americans who want to conquer and want to do the things that people said couldn't be done are still there. There's a lot of us still.
Right.
The newer generation, there's less, and there will be less next generation, but we're still here. So I think we'll find a way to do this.
Yeah, I think we will too. It's kind of a replacement for the internet kind of thing, but a network protocol that is fundamentally built to resist censorship.
Yeah.
And Danny's, playing with it and got a note up. Danny's my son, for all those who don't know. And he's kind of playing with it and stuff like that. So if it becomes mature enough that businesses can start using it to do business on, and people can start using it to, exchange files and do chats and stuff like that, it could become, at least big enough that the whole censorship question from a technology point of view goes away. But that might be when things start getting really dangerous then, because then, without the ability to censor through technology, that's where governments are going to want to crack down.
Right.
So,
okay, the big freeze over America. They're calling this Winter Storm Uri, which is
really they're
pretty
naming
much
winter
all
storms
over
now?
North. Yeah, they're naming this one because it's covering most of North America.
Is this the 25th one, or is this? Did they start with Z and they go backwards?
I have no idea. I don't know if there is an official naming system for winter storms, or if somebody just started calling it that. But I think we know of at least 23 deaths right now.
A bunch of them. Well, 5 of them happened in that crash down in Dallas-Fort Worth. Remember that?
Yeah,
Did you read about that?
I did read about that. Was part of this news story. I kind of lumped it together because there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Tragic. I gotta say, it was kind of fun because Terry and I we had decided to go on a little mini vacation somewhere, so we were in a hotel room and the TV's on and they've got the news talking about these different things going on. This was Thursday. No, it was Friday morning.
Yeah.
Let's see. Friday morning was when it was really bad, right? Or was it Thursday morning?
I don't remember.
Anyway, whatever week it was, and you know how the news does stuff. That they'll take something and then they got to keep running with it and keep finding different angles to talk about it.
Yeah.
And stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so they've got this guy out there, and he's like demonstrating the ice on the windshield of the car and how you got to chip it off with the scraper, and he's showing a walkway, a concrete walkway, and he's explaining how the cold air can get underneath it, and he's using big gestures with his hands and stuff like that, and how the air can get underneath it, and that's why it can freeze even though on the ground it's not frozen. I mean, they're going into these long, detailed explanations of stuff that we've always taken for granted.
Right.
And just cut it, but this is like, it's like,
they don't know.
This is in Texas and stuff. So I guess they do get snow sometimes in Dallas, Fort Worth, but it's usually like it comes down, it probably doesn't stick, and even if it does stick, it goes away in a day. So this whole driving on ice thing was completely new to them.
Yeah, Vicky kept watching these trucks, just one ram into the other over and over again. They're like, why aren't they slowing down?
It's like, well, they've got their brakes on. I don't think they know how to. Yeah, that's
look at their wheels. Their wheels aren't turning.
Yeah, they're doing their best, but
the thing
is, they have no sense of this, and so they have these great big highways down there. I've been there. Took Pi down there for a college visit once, and they have these great big highways, and they drive very close together.
Yeah.
So
they've also got these terrible power outages. I don't know why they're specific to Texas. I mean,
well, two reasons. So first of all, Texas, you may not know, has made the strategic decision, and I say strategic just in the sense of saying long term, to be its own electric grid. It doesn't hook into the rest of the electric grid system of North America.
Oh, I did not know that.
And I think maybe they've done that because there's still always this little bit of element of we may one day decide that we want to be the independent Republic of Texas.
Maybe.
So that's one thing.
They also got a lot of windmills there.
They have a lot of windmills, and the windmills apparently are icing up and becoming frozen, and so they don't operate anymore.
It's my understanding that 46% of their electricity comes from windmills.
That's a lot.
That sounds like more than
it's a lot of eggs
possible.
In one basket.
Yeah, I kind of
sounds like what? You don't?
I question that number. Yeah, I
don't. I mean, they've got a lot of landmass down in Texas, and it's a lot of plains that the wind gets going across
flat.
Really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard that people like driving like out in the western desert areas of our country, like out 50 along US 50 in Nevada and stuff. I've heard that sometimes the winds can get to where they're like you can't keep your car on the road hardly.
Yeah.
So I could believe that, but the thing is, here's what I don't get. Why hasn't these windmills they're already generating electricity. They're each individual windmill is there generating its own electricity. So why doesn't it have a built-in heater that runs off of its own electricity to keep it working?
It could heat itself. It doesn't need to be on the grid.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought about that too, and I guess for some reason they never thought they would have to heat it.
I guess down in Texas you wouldn't think that, but
this stuff has happened before.
What if this is just the start? Okay, so there's this big storm, and then we're getting another like smaller version of it tomorrow or something, aren't we?
We're supposed to tonight.
Okay, what if that's just the start? What if it's going to keep coming and coming? What if there's like, all these people talking about this great reset, and what if this is just God saying, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and reset you myself."
Yeah, yeah, I'll show you.
I don't think so either, but yeah.
You never know. I know there's a lot of weird things happening, but I mean, as Americans, we tend to look at politics as the beginning and ending of the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Joe Biden has control of the White House, and we are on a fast track to socialism, possibly communism, and maybe it's going to go all the way there. And people look at that, this is the worst. That's the end of the world type of thing to them.
Right.
When it's like, okay, it's just one country, and it's happened 1,000 times in 1,000 other countries before. Just look what they did. Well, most of them just kind of failed. But
they collapsed.
Actually, they all failed.
Right.
But the bigger thing to me is the fact that we have this comeback to the traditional Latin Mass. Mm-hmm. We have two popes. When Pope Benedict announced that he was retiring, the Vatican was struck by lightning, and then this new pope comes in. Yeah, you can see a video of it. That night, the Vatican was struck by lightning.
Wow. Okay.
That really happened. So, and now this new pope comes in. He's already you could describe him as heretical, and he's saying things. He's teaching things that aren't real, and he's bringing false gods into the Vatican.
Yeah.
So, to me, if you're going to talk about end of the world stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's end of the world stuff. The politics is kind of, the world goes what it goes, and it revolves and turns over and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay, there's some Black Lives Matter protests in New York City. There was some arrests and some police officers got injured. I think what's happening here is Black Lives Matter they're thinking we got the Democrats on board, or we got them their win. Now we get to do what we want. And they're finding out that they were just useful idiots and they were never going to have a whole lot of power. So now they're getting arrested. They weren't getting arrested before. Now they are.
Right.
Okay. There's some more Afghanistan, violence. There's, 4 security forces personnel, including a commander, are killed in eastern and southern Afghanistan. The clashes with an unidentified terrorist group. So I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to see more of this kind of stuff happening in the East.
Yeah,
and
well,
I think,
I predicted that.
Yeah.
With a Biden win, we're going to see a resurrection of ISIS.
Yeah, I think that's coming pretty quickly. Let's see. So archaeologists in Egypt and the city of Abydos, Abydos, found a mass production brewery dating back to something like 3000 BC.
Oh, wow.
So they were mass producing beer or wine or whatever in 300 BC. It's the oldest high production brewery. 3000, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The oldest high production brewery in the world.
That
I wonder if they're going to open up a brewery on it.
Amazing. They should.
They definitely should.
Because there was a find in China or something like that, like the world's oldest known intentionally alcohol fermented drink. It was like it wasn't exactly what you would call anything we have today. It was a mixture of honey and berries and other stuff to make the sugars, but it was fermented and it was a deliberate recipe somehow they had figured out. And I guess they had some sealed barrels of this stuff that actually was like
they had actual stuff?
Like the actual stuff that they found, I think.
Wow.
So, but
I didn't know that.
But mass producing, that's really amazing.
Yeah, mass producing lets you know that it was more than just a king making it. There was an economy.
Yeah, it was part of an economy to make this stuff. That's
pretty neat.
I wonder if that's gonna cause some historians to revise their ideas about how societies developed and stuff.
Because when we think about it, there was a pharaoh and he built pyramids, and everybody pretty much did what he wanted, and everybody's life was focused on doing what the pharaoh wanted.
Right.
That's kind of how it's portrayed. But now we've got a brewery, meaning the king wouldn't have had them mass produce beer for himself. That
had to be part of a. Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think of that would make sense for it to be a part of the pharaoh's operation is, what if Egypt, locally speaking, What if Egypt was the only one who had discovered how to make this stuff, and so he was using it and selling it to other
I don't know.
kings, other countries, other
Noah made wine when he got off the ark.
Oh, that's true. That's true. They knew how to make wine.
Yeah, maybe he made something special. It was like good tasting stuff, like Sam Adams.
So everybody knew how to make wine. It's just that he was mass producing it. But yeah, you're right. That's got to be an economy.
Facebook has announced it will ban Australian users from viewing and sharing news articles. This goes back to the fight they're having with Google.
Yep.
So we'll see where this is sounding better and better to me.
The techies are lining up. They're going to find that they're not quite as relevant to the world as they imagined that they were.
Yeah, I think this is a really good thing. Okay, so we've discovered a sub-Neptune exoplanet. What is a sub-Neptune exoplanet? That is 3 times larger than Earth and which orbits a relatively young star.
So exoplanet means a planet of another star.
From another system.
Of another, yes. So sub-Neptune, does that mean it's closer than Neptune is to our sun? Or does that mean that it's smaller than Neptune?
I should know it, and I don't. This would be
3 times because I thought. See, I would have thought sub-Uranus would be the key, because I thought Uranus was the smallest of the gas giants.
Well, it's saying refer to a planet with smaller radius than Neptune.
Okay.
Even though it may have a larger mass. So it might be a solid planet, but smaller than Neptune. But,
okay.
And they're saying 3 times larger than Earth. Does that mean... But that probably means 3 times massive. 3 times higher mass than Earth, right?
Oh, okay. No, 3 times larger...
How would they know the actual size?
Because the size is what's going to give things like the amount of light blockage as it passes in front of its star and stuff like that.
Okay. They know the mass from the wobble, and they know the size if it's passing directly in front of the star.
They can figure that out. But I just looked it up real quick. It turns out Uranus is slightly larger in diameter than Neptune, so sub-Neptune would be... So you got the gas giants, which are Saturn and Jupiter.
Much larger than Neptune.
What's that?
My anus is much larger than Neptune.
Well, that's just because of all that stuff you eat. Anyway, so you got the two gas giants, which are Saturn and Jupiter, and then the ice giants, which are Neptune and Uranus. And did you know that Uranus is an ice giant? Anyway, Neptune is the smaller of the two, and the ice giants are both smaller than the gas giants. So I guess sub-Neptune would be what they look for to be possibly in an Earth class kind of a, like a rocky
So an
planet.
ice giant, does that mean... Oh, okay. I was going to say, it's not made of ice, is it? Daggone it, it's just
Is
Thomas.
that your dog?
Yeah. Okay, so it's made of elements heavier than hydrogen and helium.
Yes, that's
so it could still be gas.
Yeah, and much of it's probably like gaseous towards the outer fringes, and as you go in, it gets liquidy and then icy. But
yeah,
that's one of the things that I learned listening to that titanium physicist podcast. That when astronomers talk about ice and other things, they'll talk about ice and what's the other one? Metal. Ice and metal. They don't mean ice and metal in the way that we think of ice and metal in our normal daily lives. They're just talking about the weight of the elements that are the primary makeup of a planet.
Right. Okay. That's all the news I got.
All right. Well, I got a few things. Oh, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up. This is not a nonsense news. This is more end of the world news. Apparently, like as of yesterday or so, the decision is that, and I don't know if this is something like China did unilaterally, and Pope Francis can't do anything about it, or if it was actually agreed to by Pope Francis. I can't imagine. But apparently China has now decided that their official government Catholic Church, the one that the Pope made the deal with a couple years ago, they are now free to select and consecrate their bishops without reference to or input from Rome.
That's insane. But I thought
the original deal
anyway.
was that they get to select for like a pool of them, and then they have to submit it to Rome for final approval. Now they're saying, no, we don't even need that. We're just going to go ahead and make our bishops.
Jeez.
So
wow.
I don't know. I don't know how the Pope ever thought it wasn't going to turn into that.
He didn't.
It's like I can't do him the disservice of thinking that he was stupid enough to fall for that unwittingly. This had to be part of his plan. This had to be part of what he intended all along. But to believe that would mean to believe that he's got really, really evil motives of some kind.
Either really evil
I don't
or really
know.
stupid.
Or really,
It's
really
gotta be one
stupid.
of
Yeah,
those
I don't
things.
get it. It can't be neither. It's got to be one or the other.
Either way, it's a shame.
Yeah, it is, and we should
This
continue
is
to
our-
pray for him.
Our Papa.
Okay, so now for some nonsense news.
All right.
In DeKalb County, Alabama, authorities are investigating an illegal alcohol-making operation discovered in the Rainsville Wastewater Treatment Plant facility.
Like a still?
Well, it says alcohol making, so it's at least a fermenter. It might not be a still.
Okay.
Chief Deputy Bragg was contacted to let them in. They found a large wine production. Okay, so that's it. It's wine at a wastewater plant. A wine production operation.
At a wastewater plant.
Makes you wonder about that wine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sheriff's office says this investigation is ongoing. Charges will be filed in the coming days.
Can you really make that much money from making your own alcohol? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what yeah.
I mean, you could get it at any. It's not like it used to be, where I mean, you could just go buy it, especially something like wine.
Yeah, you
and
can
if
buy
it's made,
$3 wine.
I mean, you buy good wine. $3 wine is good wine compared to wine made at a waste processing plant.
I gotta think they didn't use wastewater to make this wine. It's just that they were hiding it in the plant.
Yeah, I guess it was easy to hide. I gotta wonder, what if it was just a couple guys saying, hey, let's make some wine, and they're at work, and well, we'll just keep it here at work, and it's like a little tub of wine.
Well, okay, so the sheriff says this is definitely one of the biggest operations we've seen in our county and possibly our state.
Well, Alabama, how long have you been busting people for making wine?
I don't know, but in Alabama...
Considering everybody makes it themselves all the time.
It's illegal in Alabama to have more than 15 gallons of homemade wine or beer at a time.
Wow.
And according to...
They probably busted a guy with 30 gallons.
Well, it says police show multiple fermenting vessels filled with what appears to be more than 100 gallons of wine. But, I gotta say... in the ranking of criminal activity, I don't know. Maybe this is where do we place this?
Sign.
Where do we place this relative to mask wearing?
Or
failure to wear masks. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I got if this is your
that's
big
how
bust,
tame
Sheriff,
Alabama is.
I know.
There's no crime in Alabama. They can just bust people for making wine.
I know.
A couple of good old boys making wine at the waste plant.
At a waste processing plant. This is his big bust, his big excitement for the week or whatever.
How much you want to bet that he thought he was busting a drug ring, Like he thought they were growing marijuana or something.
And it turned out to be a bunch of homemade
just a
wine.
bunch of winemakers. And he doesn't want to feel stupid.
It's not even
he still
distilled.
looks stupid.
It's just wine.
Yeah, it's not even moonshine or anything. Wow.
Anyway, okay, so next, so on a China airline, flight attendants, I guess there was a somebody who contracted COVID, and this is what results from this like hyper contact tracing stuff that you do. Somebody contracted COVID. The only place that they could identify that they took their mask off was in the restroom on the airplane. Now, I'm going to stop here and remind everybody who's listening to us that the theory behind the masks does not include that your mask protects you.
Right.
A mask can't keep you from getting COVID. The theory is that if you happen to have COVID, you might keep from giving it to somebody else by wearing a mask, but it doesn't protect you. But apparently they didn't get that memo in China because they decided that because this woman took the mask off in the restroom of the airplane, that must be where she got it. So now the technical guidelines for this China Aviation Authority are recommending that all of their airline staff, their stewardesses and stuff like that, avoid going to the restroom during flights. Instead, they want them to just go ahead and put on a pair of Depends and do it that way. So,
really?
The next time you're on an airline and the waitress is serving you a drink, if she looks a little bit funny for a few seconds, you might wonder.
I think they're just using that as an excuse. I think they just don't want their employees to take breaks.
That could be. Maybe they go in there and smoke or something.
Slave masters there. I mean, like...
They are.
Like, when they decided they needed a whole hospital built in a day and a half or something like that, people were being shot for taking breaks.
Wow.
It is...
I didn't know that. Wow.
Our politicians brag about or harp on the fact that they can build a city overnight. But that's why. I mean, people don't understand how bad China is.
Yeah, it's not a joyous, sense of accomplishment.
Everybody hold
kind of
hands
thing
and
for the
work
people who
together.
do this.
No,
yeah, no, it's not like that.
Slavery.
Yeah, it's slave labor. Okay, so this is one. Someday we'll have to do one on the nature of private property and from a moral point of view and that kind of stuff. But this is kind of sad, actually. So, a couple in Michigan were sued by their son, and he actually won. Let's see if it says what the settlement. $75,000. He actually won this. They will have to pay their son $75,000 for, and this is the really sad part, for destroying his porn collection.
This is in Michigan?
In Michigan, in the United States. He got divorced, moved back in with his parents, had this big porn collection. They realized he has a porn problem. And I guess a lot of it is what I get. I guess there are collectors, the collectible, Anyway,
like a first edition Playboy or whatever,
stuff like that. Yeah, but tapes and
they threw it
DVDs and VHSs, they destroyed it.
Yeah.
And they told him, hey, we're doing this for you. We would have done the same thing if we found that you had a brick of coke or whatever, in our house. And but he sued them in court, and they have to give him like $75,000 for it. That's just awful.
I can't think of anything funny to say about that.
I know it's
terrible.
Just awful. That's true nonsense. I don't know, if I can find out who these people are. It would be a really cool thing if we could, find some way to
interview.
Make it so that get money to them, or do like a fundraiser for them or something like that. Yeah. or maybe even pay for an appeal.
Yeah.
So
that's insane.
Yeah.
Wow, these kids.
So anyway, yeah, that's awful. Okay, my final one. This is one I swear you never thought that this would be a problem, but in France, a school had to put out a notification urging their parents to please don't throw your kids over the gate.
Throw your kids over the gate.
So a school in Avignon, France, has up until 8:30 to drop your kids off before the gate closes.
Oh.
But some parents get there a little bit after the gate closes, and they still want their kids to go to school. It's a 6-foot gate.
So they toss them.
They chuck them over the gate.
I wonder if the kids are cool with this, or like, no, don't throw me over the gate.
There hasn't been any injuries so far, but the school puts notices outside on the entrance.
Please do not throw kids over gate.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you what, I went through the period of dropping kids off at school.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, I had 6 kids all going to the same school. I pulled up, and I could get them out of my van within 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so fast. And I would see these parents with one child.
And it would take them 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you doing? Get the hell out of the way.
The kid should already have his backpack
angry.
in his hand, and it should be like, open the door, step out, close the door, you're gone.
Yeah, I barely even slow down. My kids knew, and then, like, picking them up, same thing. It was like, my kids knew if they were late, I was probably going to drive off without them.
Yeah.
They knew to get their butts in the car, ready to leave, as soon as that bell rang. There was no fooling around. I don't... And I noticed that most big families are like that.
It's like, and the guys with single kids, it's like, okay, I'll get out of the car, I'll go around to the door where I put my lunch and open it and get my lunch out, and then I'll go to the door where my backpack is and open it and get my backpack out. And it's ridiculous. No, you put your backpack and your lunch on your lap. When you get there, get out and get your bomb out of the way so the next person can drop their kid off. Parents
stop, get out of the car, and run over and give their kid a hug, and then get back in the car. And it's like, you gotta be kidding me.
That's give them the hug before you leave the house. If you feel like you need to do that.
People. Oh well.
Well, I guess these are parents who don't want to put up with those parents, so they get there a little bit later, and then it's like, well, okay, you know, all those gym classes you've been taking, just roll when you hit the ground.
Yeah, we've trained you for this. Get ready to be tossed.
Yeah.
Don't throw kids over gate. I wonder how high the gate is.
It said 6 foot.
6 foot.
Yeah. So I'm
That's a pretty high.
I'm thinking that more often than not, it's that they're kind of like reaching up, holding them by their hands, and letting them drop over on the other side.
Yeah. Throw over the gate. 1, 2, 3,
go! Go!
Oh, well.
That's all I got.
That's all we got. All right. Well, folks, think about what we said, and
as always,
hopefully we'll see you next week. Oh, yeah, and
keep circling those beads.
You know, we missed 1 week.
That's right. Last week we didn't do it.
Yeah, I apologize for that. But we are trying to get
steady
and do it every week. So hopefully we'll be here next week.
Yep.
All right, thanks, folks.
Bye.